Monkey is brought to you by Aurifil Italian thread, perfectly suited for all your quilting projects.
Hi and welcome to Quilt Monkey. In today's show we are going to be making block number 9, our final block in the Supersize Super Modern Sampler Quilt. The block that we are making today is called Berry Patch. It's a block that is made up of a lot of half square triangles. We're making this block to counterbalance the block that we made last time using the tube technique. So that one has got a lot of squares, this one has got a lot of triangles. It's just to balance that small square block out. It's a great block for using scraps or charm squares, and you can have a lot of fun with colour value. So using light, dark and medium colour value fabrics. So let's see what we need to make this block. This is a really good block for scraps or smaller pieces of fabric that you've got laying around. You want to kind of have it as scrappy as possible, and you need to cut the following. You need a total of 14 5-inch squares in a range of light value fabrics, so very pale fabrics. You're going to make half square triangles with these, so either cut them in half across the diagonal or put the line on. If you need a refresher, just head back to the half square triangle episode and you'll learn all you need to know about half square triangles. So we've got the 14 5-inch squares from the light value fabrics, 14 5-inch squares again for the medium or dark value fabrics. This is going to be the other half of your half square triangle. So again, cut them in half on the diagonal or use whatever is your preferred method of half square triangle construction. You also need 2 light value 4.5-inch squares and 1 8.5-inch square in a light value as well. So 8.5-inch square in a light value, 2 4.5-inch squares in a light value, 14 5-inch squares in medium to dark value and 14 5-inch squares in light values. So like I say, it's a great one for scraps or smaller pieces of fabric, or maybe charm squares if you want to use charm squares for your half square triangles. What you're going to do is make half square triangles with these light and dark medium value fabrics. So I've cut mine into half across the diagonal. I'm just going to sew with a 1/4-inch seam for all of them, mix them up so you've got a lot of variety, and just randomly piece them all, then give them a press, open them out, and then we'll come back and trim them down. So I'm going to go away and do that, and then I shall come back. So I've pieced all of my half square triangles together, pressed them so that the seams are open and they lay nice and flat. And now I've got to finish trimming them off. Now usually when I'm making half square triangles, I like to cut my original squares a full inch bigger than the squares I want to end up with. So I'm doing a 4.5-inch half square triangle block here. So normally I would cut my original squares to 5.5 inches. Because I want this to be charm square friendly, I'm showing you how you can do it with a 5-inch square. So it's a little bit tighter. You don't have as much room to play with when you're trimming. But as long as you use a scant 1/4 inch seam allowance, you're fine. So I'm using my Quilt in a Day Square It Up ruler, which is my favourite ruler, and just trimming off the excess. Spin it round, trim the other 2 sides. So as you can see, there's not a lot of extra fabric to trim off here, but there is a little bit, and you manage to get a nice 4.5-inch square. Last one. So like with this side, really we're just tidying up the edge, not even trimming any of the fabric off. Because I've pressed the seams open, the half square triangle unit lays really nice and flat. There you go. Right, so these are my last two. I'm going to finish laying out my block, which I've already started with because it took forever. And as you can see, you've got the central square, and if we run diagonally across, you've got one half coming down towards you and one half going away from you. So that's how you want to lay out your block. And they're laid out in patches of 4, basically. As you can see, there's 2 spots that are missing. The reason that I didn't tell you to cut your squares when we were doing the original cutting is because I wanted to give you a couple of options at this point. So the berry patch block, as it is traditionally, would have a light value square, so a light value 4.5 inch square in these 2 spots here. And that gives it that look. But this is your block, and you can play around with it and have a little bit of fun and change things as you see fit. So if you add a dark value 4.5 inch square to those 2 spots, you get a completely different look, which technically will be a different named block, but I don't know what the name is. So then you've got like these heavier sections that draw your eyes in to there. Or something else you can do, instead of having the light value squares in the outer corners, then put a dark value square there. And again, you've got another different look to the finished block. It's entirely up to you. It's whether you want to go for the traditional or just change it up a little bit. I'm going to go for traditional and have the light value squares there because I like the way it looks. Another thing that you can do is pick just 2 colours. So I think this block would be really, really nice in just black and white or red and white or different fabrics that are of that same colour. So lots of different blacks and lots of different whites. Or you could use some crazy prints. You could have it as one half one colour, one half another colour. Or just use 2 fabrics, 2 completely different, very, very contrasting fabrics. You always want that high contrast. So with the light value and the dark value. Because when you've got too much that is of a medium value, it all starts to blend in and you don't get enough contrast. Another thing you could do is piece the centre block. So you could have this as maybe a log cabin or a small star, something like that. Just have some fun with it. I think it would make a really nice big pillow for a couch. So now you've got your block laid out, you need to piece it together. And the easiest way to piece this block together is to separate it into sections and to separate it into 4 patches. So you've got a series of 3 4 patches on the top and 3 4 patches on the bottom rows, and then these 2 at the sides. Press all of your seams open so everything lays nice and flat, and then you can piece your rows like so. So I'm going to nip over to the sewing machine and I'm going to start piecing my 4 patches. That's block number 9 up on the design wall, and I've arranged all 9 blocks in a way that I like the look of. So I've tried to balance out the shapes and the colours and the values of the fabric. So we've got the half square triangle block down in one corner and the block with the squares in the opposite corner. We've got 2 blocks that are quite similar, the shoe fly and churn dash, opposite each other, and the other blocks spaced around them. A really good tip for judging the colour value in a quilt is to take a photo with your camera or your phone and put it on a black and white setting. So either look through the camera or look through your phone on that black and white setting, and that takes away all of the colour and just gives you the value. So you can see if you've got too much of one value clumped together, so too much dark or too much light in one place, and that helps you get a better judge of the layout of your blocks. So remember that we are going to sash these blocks as well, so they're not going to be quite as on top of each other. And now that you've laid them all out, you can make some kind of decision on what you want to do for the sashing. So whether you want something that is a high contrast, maybe something that's really, really dark or really, really light, or something that's kind of similar. I'm going to go for a textured solid rather than a solid for mine, just to add a little bit of difference. So we're going to do that on the next show. I'll show you how to sash and add little cornerstones. If you want to make your quilt bigger, this will end up, once it's sashed, at about 76 inches square. If you want to make it bigger, then you can make 3 extra blocks. You can make more than 3 extra blocks, but 3 extra blocks, and that will take it to a nice big quilt. Or you can also add a border. I'm not going to add a border on mine because I quite like the way that the blocks will just come right to the edge of the quilt. I think it gives it a more modern look. So, I'll see you next time when we sash our quilt.